back to reviewing the book, Red Mountain. Chapter 15, the title was Filling in the Missing Years. This is a chapter-by-chapter book review of the Red Mountain, so if you're reading the book, please stop watching the video now. It is a spoiler. So, Filling in the Missing Years was a beautiful title. I really like that title. And it was about Brooks, and Brooks is the person that had an interview with the Rolling Stones, and after he'd had the interview with the Rolling Stones, his father pulled in the driveway. And I wasn't sure if it was because he read the Rolling Stones article or what. I was very unclear about that. But it turns out that he didn't read the article at all. And what he had done was went to a liquor store and bought a bottle of wine, and he said it was the best bottle of blankety blank wine that he had ever had. And so he went onto the website to research more about the wine maker, and that is where he saw a picture of a younger version of himself, a much handsomer version of himself looking back at him. So then they had their awkward moment at the dining cafe where they went to eat to meet each other, and so basically Brooks just came out, and was like, "What are you here for?" And the dad introduced himself and said his name was Charles, and that he wanted to meet his son. And then of course Brooks like, "How do you know that you're my father?" Even though all the signs were there. They shared similar looks. They shared even certain terms and words that they shared together, and obviously they didn't grow up together, so all the similarities pointed to the fact that he was definitely related in some sort of way. And age made it a very good factor that it was obviously his father. So he lets him get by on that, and goes ahead and allows him to continue with this story. So Brooks asked him, I think like most people, if you were adopted or given up by your parents, why now? And why did you give me up in the first place? And so the father proceeded to say that his mother and himself were very, very young. They were 18 in college. They had no money. Mom was trying to become a nurse, and the dad was a beach bum going to college. So they weren't ready for children, and so they decided they would give the child up for adoption. And so the Brooks was like, "Well, why didn't you just have an abortion?" Interesting question. But of course, he had a hard life. He had to struggle most of his life to get where he was, and he definitely had lots of things that happened to him that he wished would have never happened. So I guess it's a legitimate question, why cause me all the suffering? And so the father says that they believed in the adoption process, and in their minds they couldn't take care of the babies. So knowing that there's so many families out there suffering to try to have a child, that surely somebody would take this newborn child and raise it as their own. And unfortunately, that's not what happened to Brooks, but that was what the parents envisioned in their young age of 18. So anyway, they get past all the storytellings, and the father, of course, apologizes that he had a rough go at it. That's not the vision they had for him. And they continue talking, and the father goes into, he wants to build a relationship with him, and that he has a brother, but the brother stopped talking to the mom and the dad a year ago. And so, which I skipped the part, the mom and the dad end up breaking up for a couple of years after the adoption, but then, or after giving the child up. But then the dad continued to pursue her, and they did end up getting married, and then they had a child, a boy. But anyway, now the boy is grown up, and he's 28, and he no longer wants anything to do with the mom and dad and has not talked to them in over a year. And so the dad said, we want you back in our lives. Your mother too, she just wasn't ready to meet you. And even though it's probably hard for you to believe, but we lived with a lot of guilt, which, there's always, both parts of the story. So I bet there are tons and tons of people out there in the world that definitely regret, the decision they made of giving their children up for adoption. And so anyway, the dad had been looking for Brooks for 15 years, and he was going through the system to try to find him, but it was unsuccessful, and the bottle of wine is what connected them. So anyway, as they continue their conversation about getting back together, Brooks basically tells the dad, I've definitely grown up alone and had to defend myself, and I've learned to, not trust people because it generally doesn't work out in the end. The father says he completely understands, and they can take it as slow as they, that he needs, and that he can stay, or I can leave and come back when you want. We really want to be a part of your lives. So anyway, they finish their meal, and then Brooks meets up with Abby, which Abby and him are starting a new relationship, and he tells Abby about meeting his father. And that's basically the end of chapter 15 is Brooks and Abby walking through the vineyard, talking about what's his plans on getting to know his father. That is chapter 15. And chapter 16 is the challenges of transformation. So we'll see who that is about next time. To review chapter 16 because they're out building the barn right now and it felt kind of awkward, so I just thought I'd come in here and review chapter 16, which was called The Challenges of Transformations, which was about Margaret. And remember, Margaret went from Margaret 1.0 to Margaret 2.0, and she's getting her stuff in order so she can run a successful restaurant and bed and breakfast, and she's thinking about doing cooking classes and so on and so forth. And so it starts off that she's running with her dog, Philip, and she's talking to Philip, her dog, about all of her plans and how she has a crush on Jake Forrester. I think previously I'd said Foster, and it's actually Forrester. Forresters are the rich, famous celebrity family that moved in, that her son Jake played piano with, or Jasper played piano, and Jake is the lead singer of the band, and he wants to make a music album with her son Jasper. And so she's talking to her dog about this, and she's talking about how she has a crush on him, but obviously nothing would ever happen between them because he's married, and there is something she would never do. She'd never cross the lines of sleeping with a married man. She never even would have done that as Margaret .1. So anyway, she proceeds to talk to her dog about this, and says that even if he was single, she wouldn't have a chance because supermodels would be lined up to date him. But then she was like, no, this is the new Margaret, and I am beautiful on the inside. And if I was single, or if he was single, I would have a chance just as much as anybody else in the world. And then she said, good golly, I hope you don't understand what I'm saying, to the dog. I thought that was a funny part. So anyway, she goes back home. Her son is playing the piano. She can tell that he's sad because of the way he's playing the piano. And it turns out that, you know, he's going through the big, you know, questions of life where everything just seems to be falling apart. He has, you know, mixed feelings about his dad. He's not happy at school. He's in love with a girl who doesn't even see him. He's not happy with how he's been playing his piano lately. And he's upset because he's short and he wants to play football. And the list goes on and on and on. So she talks to him about it and tells him, you know, those are just normal things that happen when you're growing up. And in fact, not just when you're growing up, but as you go through life. You have really good days, you have really bad days, and when you have bad days, everything looks ugly and the world is painful, but that doesn't mean that you don't have a good future. And then she's like, oh, by the way, let's talk about this girl. And the girl, of course, ends up being Jake Forrester's daughter, Amelia. And he doesn't think Amelia has even noticed him, but we learned a couple of chapters ago that, oh yeah, she does. He just doesn't know it yet. So that'll be interesting to see get played out. Then she has it out with the contractor because the building is going slow, and so she basically just lays it out and says, come on now, I'm tired of writing these checks and I want my building done. And the contractor gives her the long list of reasons why things aren't going the way they're supposed to go. But she pushes it and she says, I'm going to be in the business right now and we're going to figure this out. And we're going to have a worksheet, a spreadsheet, and we're going to get all of these things laid out and we are going to follow them and we're going to have a new timeline and we're going to get this building done. And when the contractor tries to give her some BS, she does her very best to restrain herself because she just wants to smack him across the face, but she doesn't. And she is going to be firm on him, and they're supposed to get together and talk about the new time frame. So that was chapter 16. Chapter 17 is Who Else Knows? So we shall see who else knows in the next review. Thank you guys so much for watching. Talk to you again next time.